Professor Levaniouk just visited Hour 25, which is a sequel project to the Ancient Greek Hero in 24 Hours, otherwise known as Heroes X. It's a Harvard X project. And Professor Levaniouk was just having a conversation with our community, some members of our community, and we were discussing the theme of death in, let's say, ancient Greek weddings, and perhaps even traditional Russian weddings. And Professor Levaniouk, do you see any associations, or do you see any moments where the theme of death comes forward in these two traditions?
Yes. So this is it's actually a very difficult question for me myself, because I sort of started from thinking that there must be similarities between wedding and death. That is a little bit of a received opinion in classics, that somehow the wedding is the death of a maiden and then rebirth as a woman, and then there are sort of similarities in ritual. In both cases, a person alive or dead leaves the house never to come back, accompanied in a procession, accompanied by torches, accompanied by singing, and so it's very tempting to see the wedding as death of a young girl, so this is going to be a sort of real live look into at least how I work, because I haven't really come to terms with this question, and I don't know the final answer. What I tried to do is to sort of figure out things about Greek wedding, and then also look at comparative studies. I'd look at Russian traditional weddings, and in Russian case, really, and that might not be the same in ancient Greece. It doesn't. We can presume that it is the same. I really have to say that there is precious little about rebirth. There is quite a lot about death, but rebirth, not so much. And the death is not so much death of a maiden. It's not that we see that, just as we can make this argument on the male side, that there is some kind of trial and experience, and you die as a boy and you're reborn as a man. Well, it's much harder to make for a woman, and she wishes to die. She wishes to never make this transition. But it's not at all that she wishes to die as a girl. She just wishes to die because it is such a horrible thing that is going to happen to her. And actually, the things that she says, what was amazing to me, that the things that women say in this sort of dark moments of Russian wedding, which are followed then later by quite cheerful moments, which is not the overall picture of marriage, but there is a moment when the bride is having all these dark thoughts, and they're very similar to what women say in ancient Greek tragedy. That this is really the end of everything that I know, and this is the moment where you're sold in one night. You're sold. And you're no longer cherished, and you're no longer the precious flower in your father's garden. Now you have to live with foreign people, and they may be abusive, and they can go out and they can have life outside of the house, but for you, no, you're entirely dependent on this one man. There is this talk of death at the prospect of that it would be better to die now. But there is really no secure indication, of rebirth as a woman. That when she becomes a woman, no doubt, but that it is seen as a rebirth. I haven't been able to quite find that. And I expected to. Really, I sort of thought, I'll find some nice confirmation for that theory that I found quite pleasant to think with. But so far, I have to say, I have not found it. And so I then was sort of forced to go back and look at Gloria Ferrari's work, she advanced this argument that is quite provocative, saying that in ancient Greek ideology, in ancient Athenian ideology of the 5th century, women do not grow up. So men make this transition from boys to men, but women, in some fundamental sense, forever remain children. That this transition that they make somehow, well, it doesn't make them fully citizens. It doesn't make them fully responsible for themselves. They just pass from being in care of one man, their father, to being in care of another man, their husband. But they haven't. That's not really growing up in not the same kind of transformation as men undergo.
How fascinating.
Yes, and somewhat disheartening, but.
Janet, did you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions. I am remembering your videos from Heroes X, and you mentioned that during the wedding week, you have this very sad moment, and the next day you are celebrating. Maybe yes. The moment you are describing is one of those fragments, and then the next day there will be a celebration, and bride will feel and show the happy face.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. My question will be mostly about property exchange that I am very interested in. The bride will get out from father's house and will be probably going to father-in-law's house. She will not have her own property per se.
Yeah.
So during that week, there are many exchanges and very ritualized exchanges. Can you talk about that, those exchanges a little bit?
Well, unfortunately, we as scholars don't know that much about it, and I specifically know even less. So I haven't really looked that much into it. I know that there are various occasions on which people give and receive gifts. I mean, there is of course the official property exchange, which is negotiated even before the week happens, during the moment of betrothal. Then it is decided what the dowry will be, and the property arrangements are made in between two men. But then there are also sort of more symbolic property exchanges. That are gifts that are brought from the groom to the bride, and that are brought from the bride to the groom during the week. And we don't, the most information we have in Greece is that there is this particular part in the ritual which everybody is wondering what exactly it is, when the bride is sort of revealed, or sometimes it's called a looking on festival, something like that, seeing festival. Mm-hmm. When she is, and some people think she's unveiled, and other people think, and I think that she is not unveiled but brought out, sort of publicly presented as a bride in all her splendor. And on occasion of this event, she is given some kind of gift from the groom, and we don't know what they are. It's really hard to determine. There's so much complexity in Greece. I don't know whether you remember from reading the Iliad, on the shield of Achilles there is a wedding scene.
Yes.
Where pre-wedding scene. Well, there is actually a wedding scene where they lead processions. But then at the very end, it's striking to me that the shield of Achilles starts with the depiction. The first human scene that we see is actually a wedding procession, or several of them. There is a city of peace, and they're celebrating weddings. And this is after the sort of stars and moon. That's the first thing you see. And then at the very last scene, before again the rim of the shield and all the cosmic elements of it, and it's this pre-wedding dance on Crete, in the palace of Minos. There is a dancing for Ariadne, and they're dancing there, boys and girls holding hands. And on this occasion, the girls, remember that, Janet? The girls are called ox fetching. They're ox fetching because they're not married yet, and they're dancing with the boys. but when they are married, these boys will pay oxen for their brides, and so the girls are ox fetching for their parents.
Wow.
So there is the complexity is also that there is dowry, and there is bride price, and it's when you look at something that is so variegated, so diverse as a culture, it's really hard to come up with a sort of overall picture of how they exchanged property. But it is definitely true that women did bring some property with them, and in the cases where the marriage were dissolved in Athens, we know that sometimes property could be returned. So even though she married, she retains some kind of connection to that property.
Mm-hmm.
And if she is unmarried, the property can go back to her father.
I remember Penelope's property, if she didn't get married, was going to go back to her father, and there was that who is going to own this property issue. Am I
Yes.
my collection is right or wrong?
It's absolutely right, and it's also so the property ownership in the Odyssey. But this is just about as complex as you get with this question, because first of all, the Odyssey, we're not sure it's absolutely always consistent, and it's not depicting sort of any particular place or time. So there is always a question of, we shouldn't be, terribly narrow-minded or demand excessive realism from the Odyssey. But at the same time, it is definitely central. This is the central question. This is all about, in some ways, it's all about economies of life, and it's all about what will happen to the household of Odysseus.
Mm.
And so there is, there is even a question. Well, when the suitors want to marry Penelope, what do they want to get? Do they want to get Penelope, or do they want to get, and whatever she might bring as daughter of Icarius, or do they actually want to get the household of Odysseus? And several times in the poem it is said that they want to marry Penelope and to have the geras, which is a way of saying heroic portion of Odysseus. Well, what does that mean? So some scholars have hypothesized that their plan is to marry Penelope before Telemachus completely comes of age, and then you can have another son, and then you can somehow kill Telemachus or get rid of Telemachus. You can, and then you will become the heir to Odysseus's property. So you step into the shoes of Odysseus, and then the theory goes that maybe they lose that hope during the course of the poem because Telemachus comes of age, and he says, well, you can have my mother, but you cannot have my property.
Right.
This is the house that Odysseus left to me. And so there are the strategy of the tutors and the chances change as the poem develops. And Penelope is one of the players, and Telemachus is also one of the players. And sometimes, you have the sense that, Telemachus has grown up and makes, and asserts his prerogatives, but the Penelope in the meanwhile is worried about the dangers of that, because she knows that as soon as Telemachus says, I am actually the owner of this property, then the only way for the suitors to have sort of any success there is to kill him, which is exactly what they're trying to do, and which is exactly what Penelope is worried about.
Mm. Well, Professor Levaniouk, thank you so much for talking to us today. Unfortunately, it just gets more and more interesting, so it's hard to ever stop.
This is a very, very big question that Janet asks.
So we're so grateful that you took the time to talk to us today, and we hope that you'll visit Hour 25 again.
I would love to. Thank you very much, Claudia, and thank you, Janet.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.